contest set for one fall is for the WWE Championship.
Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Welcome to Around the Turnbuckle, Wrestling Hot Topics. I am Big Al. That is my partner in crime, Professor Keith. As always, and we are here on Tuesday, live, 7 p.m. every Tuesday to talk what's hot and what's new in the world of wrestling, whether it be AEW, whether it be WWE, whether it be some major news in professional wrestling. And this week, Professor, we're going to start off the show with something that, you and I have talked a lot about in private and also in group chats with my son. But last week on Dynamite, and for full disclosure, I know for a fact that the Professor and I know for the fact that the Professor does not watch Dynamite, and neither do I. Okay? So, full disclosure, we do not watch Dynamite. But when I saw, or when I had heard what happened to Tony Khan on Dynamite, I decided to look, because it's all over, it's a viral video all over the YouTubes and all over the interwebs, as our friend Mr. Cornette would say. And Tony Khan was attacked by Jack Perry, who returned during the pay-per-view to help the Young Bucks win the tag team titles in a ladder match against the I almost said it, FTR.
Yeah, FTR now.
FTR. And so FTR and the Young Bucks have met each other four times. It is 2 for 2. Yeah. It is. They are 2 for 2. Young Bucks 1-2, and now FTR 1-2. So obviously there's going to be a rubber match, I'm sure. But for the purpose of this discussion, somebody in a mask jumped into the ring, knocked down the FTR when they were about to win the AEW Tag Team Championships, and subsequently revealed himself to be Jack Perry. Then on Dynamite, Tony Khan was going to ask Jack Perry or talk to Jack Perry in some way, and all he started to do was praise Tony Khan about how great, job he's done and all these things, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, he punches him in the stomach. And the Young Bucks come out with Okada, and it looked like that they were going to stop Jack Perry from what he was doing, and instead they give him what is referred to, and I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, the Meltzer driver.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in case you guys don't watch AEW, that's what happened. Now, before I get the Professor's thoughts on all this, I want to say something that, in my opinion, that involving Tony Khan in anything on television is a huge mistake. That's my opinion. Okay, because the Professor's going to have a more detailed opinion than me. I'm just going to say this. It's a mistake. And they're going to find that out the hard way, because literally, they're setting up a match between Tony Khan and Jack Perry, which is ridiculous, because Tony Khan is not a wrestler. And I don't care how much they train him behind the scenes. He weighs 100 pounds soaking wet. He shouldn't have anything on anybody, but that's Tony Khan. The difference with Vince McMahon, because people are saying, oh, well, Vince McMahon wrestled Stone Cold Steve Austin. Vince McMahon actually was athletic. Vince McMahon couldn't wrestle, but he had the body. He worked out. He could actually he actually made it look exciting. It was exciting to watch him get his ass whooped by Stone Cold Steve Austin during the Attitude Era, time and time again, because Vince actually had the body to go with it.
Yeah, and Vince learned enough to get by. And remember, Vince wanted to be a worker. Vince wanted to be a wrestler, but his dad said no. Under no circumstances will I allow you to do that. I'll let you be a commentator. I'll let you work for me, but I will not allow you to become a wrestler. I will put my foot down and nobody will book you, and you will not be booked anywhere in the United States. I will not allow it to happen. So that was also a case of somebody who wanted to fulfill the dream. And yeah, like you said, looked the part, had been in the business for 20 years or so by that point, had, not just an executive's understanding, but an understanding from you haven't done commentary for so many years and been around the boys and all that stuff.
Well, I just got a notification from Facebook that we are not on Facebook, and our Around the Turnbuckle Facebook page is under review for content. We are live on YouTube. We are live on 2M1L Media's Facebook page, but we are not live on the Around the Turnbuckle Facebook page, so that has me concerned.
Yeah, what's up with that? What the hell could be on there that they don't like?
I don't know. Like I said, I just checked it. And I'm removing the said. So now we're only streaming on. We are only streaming live on Facebook on the 2M1L Media page, and we're only on Facebook on the. I mean, we're on YouTube live, obviously. Mm-hmm. So all of this to me seems desperate, right? Like, to me, it seems like they're down in the ratings. They're down in all their gates at the actual arenas. They're only selling 2,500 to 3,000 seats every place they go. I think now they've even downshifted to traveling around so much and doing a lot more shows at Daly's place down in Florida, because they don't have to fly everybody everywhere. They can save money that way or whatever, blah, blah, blah.
And they have to rent that, because that is obviously owned by the Khans and Jaguars organization.
All of this I can understand on an aspect of, they're trying to do something to get people to, they're trying different things.
Yeah,
and this is
going.
Right. And everybody's talking about it. We're talking about it. Cornette's talking about it. Meltzer's talking about it. They're all talking about it. So it's working in that aspect. But is it gaining them viewers? Is it gaining them pay-per-view buys?
Well, I mean,
does it have more people watching Dynamite this week to see what happens next?
And that's going to be the question. I mean, I haven't heard anything about Rampage going up or Collision going up, because remember, they have two shows that immediately followed this show.
Yeah.
And I've not heard anything about increased interest there. I mean, they have to do something. They have, obviously, their television deal is up. There is a lot of speculation on what WBD is going to do, because WBD is actually losing the NBA, it looks like, this year. They're not going to have the NBA carriage rights. So that's going to be a lot of money gone. So potentially, if they're going back to renegotiate with AEW, they may have to offer them less money, citing we don't have that NBA money coming in. Or potentially they cut bait on AEW. I don't know. I certainly strongly suspect, as most people do, that WBD is getting a cut of AEW's pay-per-view revenues. So I do think there's some kind of ownership stake or something similar within the company that's been quietly acquired. So I do think WBD is probably incentivized to stay in the AEW business. And remember, their ratings are not the greatest, and certainly not compared to WWE, but for cable, they're pretty good because a lot of cable ratings are not spectacularly higher. In many cases, they're lower than what a Dynamite brings in. So you may look at it from the wrestling bubble and go, oh, well, if they can't draw ones and twos or, whatever, they're horrible, and why would anybody want them? And it's like, because if you look at other things and you look at other shows in the cable universe, 0.8, 0.7, 0.9, around what they're drawing, and their demos are very desirable. However, they have been losing in the demo, which is, I think, the bigger concern than the rating, because the demo is what's going to set the advertising revenue, and the advertising revenue is obviously what a cable network, an ad-supported network, wants you to be able to bring in and drum up for them. I look at this too, and it's just, Tony Khan is not a wrestling personality. Tony Khan should not be a character on television. When you look at a Vince McMahon, like I said, Vince McMahon had a lot of experience being a character on television. And he could pull that off. And he knew he could pull that off. When Eric Bischoff became the evil authority figure and joined the NWO and all of that, again, Eric Bischoff was able to be a television character. Some people can do that. Some people can't. I think Tony Khan is very awkward on television. He does not look like an athlete. He does not have an athletic background that I'm aware of that would lend itself to him being, physical or anything like that. And I think the bigger, broader problem is Tony is not sympathetic. Tony is not sympathetic to a broad swath of the wrestling audience. And I don't think to a casual fan that doesn't know all of the drama that is going on in AEW, which I don't know how you wouldn't, because AEW keeps fucking going back to that drama and trying to monetize it and trying to make a big deal out of it. So Tony Khan is not a sympathetic figure in all of this, but I'm supposed to see him as a sympathetic figure now because the evil, Young Bucks, or the new elite, or whatever they're calling themselves, the evil faction of heels dropped him on his head. Right. I just don't see how this works.
And then he shows up at the NFL draft with a neck brace.
Yeah.
And was subsequently mocked. And I don't even know if he realizes he was. Like, he was laughed at by the reporters, by the media people there, because they just thought, oh, it was a wrestling angle. He's actually really fine. He just couldn't show up on Thursday after he got dropped on his head on Wednesday. He was protecting the business, I guess.
I applaud that. The only thing I would say about that is don't be an Andy Kaufman fanboy, which is what he was doing. If it was me, you own a football team. You own a world-class NFL team. Go down to the training room or whatever and get one of those, like, really good fucking immobilize your head kind of neck. Like, no, I'm serious.
I know what you mean. I know. Like the shoulder pad types.
Right. Something that's going to immobilize your neck so that it's not going to move around. Because what he did was he put the brace on. And again, this shows that he is not someone who can be a good worker or actor or whatever, because he's moving his head around like it's not her. I've seen videos of him doing something with, like, Swerve Strickland, where he's got the neck brace on and he's dancing. And he's got the neck brace on and he's dancing, and then he realizes, like, oh shit, I'm supposed to be hurt. And then he tries to sell it. And it's like, you're getting mocked by wrestling people because you're not selling it well. You're getting mocked by the NFL because the NFL doesn't want. The NFL is willing to deal with wrestling on certain terms. Like, with WWE wants to present belts and they allow the team logos to be sold as belts.
Or if you're in a city, they have football players in attendance.
Right. Like, they're willing to.
There were Eagles at WrestleMania.
Yeah, and they're willing to engage with it where it makes sense for them to engage with it. But this, to me, and I mean, I'll defer to you on it, Al, because I'm sure you know way more about, you know more about football and kind of the culture and the mores of it, I think, than I do, where I'm much more of a casual fan and all that stuff. I mean, to me, it feels like it embarrassed the NFL. I looked at one of their draft picks that the kid got picked, and they asked him questions about this, and he seemed embarrassed and flustered and not really to know kind of what to say or do. And I mean, it just comes off like it didn't help AEW. It's certainly not helping the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, to me, it becomes one of those things again of you're trying to get buzz, get press, which is great, and you should, and you're trying to improve the company. But once again, you have an inexperienced booker who, just because you're a big fan doesn't mean you understand the business, doesn't mean that you should be involved in the business. And I think it just became an embarrassment all around to everybody. I mean, what do you think? Am I off base here?
No, you're absolutely right on. Okay, so after he was laughed at by the reporters, they asked him, and I wish I had the video to show you guys, but I don't have it ready for you. But I'm sure you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, go on YouTube, type in Tony Khan NFL draft, and it'll pop up. It'll pop up where the ESPN reporters were asking him questions about his injury, and they asked after he said the phrase, when you're going up against a juggernaut like the WWE,
Yeah.
and we're the Pepsi Cola, and the WWE is the Harvey Weinstein. Obviously referring to Vince McMahon, who no longer is part of the company.
No, and he sold the last of his stock. He's
Right.
nowhere
So,
near this enterprise anymore. I understand why he's desperate to run against Vince McMahon again and book against Vince McMahon again, because that was easy mode. That was
yeah.
easy mode, and that was working pretty good for him. And you could draw a certain fan in that was disgruntled, that was disaffected. You could draw fans in on the idea of, we're wrestling without the scandals and whatnot. But
Yeah.
man, I was sickened by that comment. I really, really was.
So was I, and so was a lot of people. So they laughed at that. They're like, okay, Tony, okay, Tony. So then the one reporter says to him, what's the prognosis on your injury? And he said, well, I guess you're going to have to tune into Dynamite to find out. So right there, you're telling us, right there, you're not even trying to sell it as it's an actual injury. You're telling us that the whole thing is a ploy to get us to watch Dynamite.
Yeah.
That the only reason why you wore that stupid thing at the NFL draft is because you'd be on national television.
Yep. And that's why he booked the angle.
Promoting Dynamite.
And that's why he booked the angle when he booked the angle. Because he thought, here's an opportunity to use the main business to put over what I frankly see as a hobby business at this point. Because yes, I don't know their numbers, and I can't claim to know their numbers. They're a private company. They don't reveal them. But, I mean, I understand basics of how wrestling makes money and how wrestling is supposed to make money. And I have some basic understanding of the costs of putting on a show and whatnot. And just based on that, I personally, in my opinion, have a hard time seeing how AEW is making money on its own and is not essentially operating because the cons have a lot of money and are willing to put that money into making sure this thing operates and works.
Right. Yeah, and so again, that right there, it was the sickening comment you mentioned earlier about Pepsi and Harvey Weinstein, combined with the fact of, well, you're going to have to tune into Dynamite to find out my prognosis. Right there, I was like, you son of a bitch. Like, you fucking just... So to answer your question before, you asked me about the You asked me about the mindset of NFL players as far as wrestling's concerned, right?
And I mean fans too. I mean, I feel like there's no way you can look at this segment if you're a football fan and not feel like, what is this? What is this doing on? Like, it's just such a sour note, and it's incongruous, and it doesn't do anything.
All right,
And worse, I think it makes the Jaguars look bad as an organization.
All right, so number one, the Jaguars are a bad and poorly run organization. They are they are often criticized often in the media by their treatment of their players, by their facilities, by their practice facilities, by their everything down to their locker rooms, like everything. And any player who ever used to play on the Jaguars has confirmed that fact whenever they're asked about it. That being said, yeah, she was handing me my iPhone here because I forgot to put in an order in, and I have till 8 o'clock to do so. So I'm going to do it while we're talking here. So that being said, not the misconception of that every NFL fan and every NFL player is a wrestling fan. That's a common misconception. There are a lot of wrestling fans and there are a lot of NFL fans and a lot of NFL players that don't have anything to do with wrestling. They don't.
Right.
They're just not a fan. They're not even a casual fan.
Yeah.
Okay. But there's a large contingent of wrestling of football fans and football players who are wrestling fans. So the WWE over the years has always exploited that. Go all the way back to Lawrence Taylor against, Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam at WrestleMania. Like, go back even further than that. Go to the Battle Royal at WrestleMania 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, okay. The NFL and the WWE have always had a, pretty decent relationship.
And WCW did too. I mean, that's why I say, I think it's all.
Yeah, and WCW had some football angles. I think they had a better relationship with the NBA. They had, Dennis Rodman. They had Malone with DDP. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so my point is that, professional sports have always had, good relationships with WWE. They always thought of them as they're like the black sheep of the family, right? Here's all these pro sports. Here's football. Here's baseball. Here's basketball. Here's hockey and whatever, and soccer and whatever the hell. The Undertaker was on a soccer field the other day. Did you see that video?
No, I didn't see that one.
Look that up. The Undertaker showed up at a soccer game and Ronaldo was there and he held up a big trophy or something and it just bong and the lights went out and bong. The Undertaker standing in the middle of the field. Like, he made an appearance. It was weird, but I'm just saying, professional sports as a whole, and I'm only grouping them together because each one of them are different entities and each one of them are different companies. I get that. But as a whole, they've always viewed WWE as that fun-loving cousin, right? That fun-loving, he might be the black sheep of the family, but we love him because he's fun, right? He's fun. So overall, I'd say there are more wrestling fans that are also football fans versus football fans that hate wrestling. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I mean, I just look at it and I'm just like, it just feels amateurish and wrong. I understand what he was going for, but I think it just embarrassed all sides. And that's not what he wanted, and that's not what he was going for. And, then he goes out and he makes the comments he makes where it's like, so we went from it's embarrassing and just a misstep to, and you also had to make it worse and make yourself come off even goofier and more unlikable and like you don't know what the hell you're doing or what the hell you're talking about. Because, I just... And I mean, it's the second time we've had a misstep like this from AEW in my mind, because these are also the geniuses that put out that T-shirt with Britt Baker with the black eye, where they thought like, oh, it's showing how tough she is. It's like, no, it looks like out of context. It looks like you're fucking showing that, you think it's cool to merchandise women beaten up.
Right. Exactly.
And I guarantee you that shirt sold to people that I'm sure that company would not be proud to call, part of their viewership or whatever. Like there are just so many things I can accept that and I said it before when they were just starting out and everything else of like, they're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they're going to make mistakes on a national stage, which is going to make them look so much worse than when you're making mistakes with, an indie startup or something where it's like, well, only a couple hundred people saw that. So we can live through that. It's like, yeah, a couple thousand people are seeing this, but I had hoped by this point,
a couple thousand plus the 600 to 700,000 that watch Dynamite every week.
Right. So it's like I had hoped that by this stage of the game, we would be correcting that and we would be moving in a more positive direction. And we're just not, and it's frustrating and it's sad, and I feel bad for the folks that are trying to do a good job there, are trying to make a living, that are trying to
What
live.
about Edge? What about Mercedes Moné? Do you think at this point they're like, what the hell am I doing?
I wonder if Edge is. I mean, I certainly wonder, but then again,
You think he might not care?
I think Edge wants to wrestle at this point, and they're letting him wrestle pretty much every week whenever he wants to wrestle, and WWE was not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Bryan Danielson wants to wrestle every week, and WWE was going to be cautious with him. And you see he's getting hurt left and right. And that's a concern for me too, because
WWE was right. Go figure.
But what concerns me there is, why does he keep getting hurt? What are our safety protocols and whatnot? And I mean, this is a big issue right now too, because you just had CM Punk over WrestleMania weekend come out and do an interview that really made the company look terrible. When he's talking about, especially when he was injured and he tore his tricep, nobody called him for 6 months. Nobody was trying to get in touch with him, see how well he was doing. Nobody helped him book his surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. No communication, nothing. He was on his own. And that was indisputably your top star at that point. And I know Punk's controversial and some people don't like him, but even if you hate the guy's guts, you cannot deny he was the top star in AEW when he was there. Or none.
He was putting asses in the seats. He was in business to raise the pay-per-view buys. That's what he was there for. And they wouldn't let him do it because the Young Bucks and I'm not even going to go with Kenny, because I heard Kenny Omega say that he's not happy with the way things are happening right now.
I really wonder if Kenny's starting to set up his exit strategy, because that is a guy that is sounding more and more like maybe Cody had a point, and maybe I should go give Cody a call and see if there would be some interest up there. But then again, I don't know what Kenny can even physically do at this point. I mean, diverticulitis is no joke.
Correct. And Lesnar had it, and Lesnar survived it, and Lesnar's
had also some great freak of nature.
Correct, but he had some great work after the fact.
Yeah.
Diverticulitis just took him out of the MMA game, basically.
Yeah.
And he was able to come back, because in wrestling you have an opponent who takes care of you in that manner. So you're not going to, re-injure yourself in a bad way. Where an MMA fight, the gloves are off. You don't know what the hell, that shit's dangerous. I'm not to say wrestling's not, but I'm saying
no, wrestling absolutely is, and especially in AEW, because it seems like in AEW the inmates run the asylum and everybody can do whatever they want in terms of, dangerous spots and everything else. So, I just feel like this is a company that is in crisis right now. It is not helped by its owner. I think Tony really needs to step back and get a different level of management in there.
Yes.
And some order and some structure in there.
He needs to go away.
Because as much as, I'm crapping on AEW basically here, and we have been for the last half an hour or so, the bottom line is I don't want it to go away. I don't want anybody
No.
to go out of business, because any company that goes out of business, it's bad for us, because that's less places for somebody to work.
By the
And
way, in case
somebody
you
to
lose
make
me,
a
not to
living with
interrupt
it.
you, but in case you lose me, I have a really bad thunderstorm happening right now.
Yeah,
So
we're supposed to have something rolling too.
if you do lose me, that's the reason why.
Okay. So I mean, I think that's my bottom line on AEW at this point is I hope this works for them. I don't see how it will, unless there's some major swerve where, Tony is in on it and is a heel, because I just don't think Tony is likable, and he can get some baby faces together, because I hear some people trying to liken it to the NWO, and it's like, this is not the NWO, guys.
Well, that
Those
yeah.
guys were massively over. They were cool heels.
Plus, Bischoff was a lot better on TV than Tony is.
Oh yeah, and I mean, and you also had Hulk fucking Hogan as a heel for the first time since like the 70s. So there's a whole generation that the idea that Hulk Hogan is a bad guy now blew their minds, and would have gotten them to watch the show just to see what the hell that is.
Right.
And that, I feel like, is a big thing that AEW is missing with this angle, or just in general. Where is that hook that is getting you, not to be confused with the wrestler, where is that hook that's getting you to say, oh my God, I have to watch this?
What upsets me, dude, is I watch you and my son go back and forth in our group chat about wrestling in general, right? And you guys, and to me, it's entertaining, but I agree with a lot more than you say than what Alan says, because Alan is coming from a place where, he liked the shiny new toy. AEW has these fantastic matches, and they do. They have these fantastic matches on their pay-per-views, even sometimes on Dynamite, but they don't mean anything. They don't have any direction. It's just Tony's his fantasy booking throws this guy with this guy and said that's going to be a great match. And that's great, but for the casual fan, that doesn't hook you in to want to see what happens next week.
There are fans that love that style, and for them, AEW is perfect and should never change. And I understand that. And look, I get it. I sympathize with it. I was and still am a huge fan of ECW.
Yeah.
But the problem with...
which had a niche audience.
Yeah, and the problem with something like that, when it's a niche, is if it is not being run as a boutique-type promotion, if you are trying to run as a national entity, which AEW is trying to do, which ECW tried to do, if you are trying to run as a national entity with a niche product and you will not do the things, and I'm not saying you have to clone WWE or anything like that,
no,
but you do have to look at the things that they do that make them successful: episodic television, angles, storylines, stuff building up, build to that match. You can't just rely on the presentation of, we're going to have bangers. We're going to have bangers every night, and we're going to get 5-star reviews from the internet journalists,
our friends,
stuff like that.
Our friends.
Yeah, it's not It's not a sustainable thing. It's just not. And
it annoys me, man, because listen,
because it worries me that they're going to become another TNA, where they're going to be able to operate, but they're going to operate at a very scaled down sort of situation. And that's not good for the business, because we know in WWE, but if WWE doesn't have anybody challenging them, how long before the ship runs aground again and they sort of just go into a holding pattern? I mean, we've seen the last couple weeks where they were in a holding pattern. They have been. I think that's because of the draft. I hope it was just because of the draft. And now that we're past the draft and everything, we're going to start seeing them get back to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've had a tremendous amount of goodwill, and I'm starting to worry about them pissing it away and people losing that WrestleMania euphoria and looking at the product now and going like, oh, gee. But I thought the draft was good. I mean, to go to something positive.
Well,
I
yeah, let's go there. Like thoughts
yeah,
on the WWE draft. Like, what do you think? I had that ready. I did see. I have a list of, in case you missed this past, Monday on Raw, round one, Imperium, and that includes Gunther and Ludwig Kaiser because they kicked the other guy out. So
right.
Ludwig Kaiser and Gunther went to Raw. Jade Cargill went to SmackDown. Some of these are lateral move, like they're not even switching shows. That's
Which
the
I mean,
one thing. There was
I
not a
don't think
lot
we
of
need
switching
to switch.
shows.
Yeah,
Damage Control went all of them, like all of them. That Asuka, Io, Kyrie, Dakota all went to Raw,
that
and
was interesting, I thought.
Kevin Owens went to SmackDown. In round two, the big one was CM Punk went to Raw.
Right.
Um, and I mean, they had a thing back and forth with him and Drew McIntyre, and that's another thing I want to talk about later, or well, next is that WWE re-signed Drew McIntyre.
Yes.
Yes, that is where he belongs, and he's never been hotter. I mean, as this
Yeah.
heel, as this telling shit the way it is, like almost pipe bombing every freaking promo, you know, like that. That's I've
They're
been waiting
letting
for this
Drew,
guy for a while.
yeah, they're letting Drew be Drew, and it's really working. And I mean, I'd
Not
heard
carrying
for
a fucking sword around.
right, and I'd heard for a while that it was one of those cases where there was really no fear from either side or desire from either side to walk away. It was more a matter of both sides wanting a deal that was mutually beneficial and that made sense to both of them, and nobody was going to sign anything until both sides felt like they got what they wanted. And
Right.
Drew had a tremendous amount of leverage at this point. I mean, kudos to him because, yeah, like you say, I don't think Drew's been hotter ever. I mean, and that includes the period when he re-signed, when he was coming off a very hot international redemption tour and came in with a lot of fanfare and had that great run in NXT and got himself to the WWE title. Unfortunately, COVID was raging, and it really fucked him over. And I hope that we're going to get back to a point where he is going to be able to get that title again or get the world title, whichever version, and have that run that he was denied, because he really does deserve it, and especially with the work he's doing right now. But the thing I
Absolutely.
liked about the draft, because I looked at the overall master list, and if you go out and you look at the overall master list, what struck me is how even it felt like.
By the way, McIntyre went to Raw. Like we were talking
Yeah,
about him. So,
yeah.
so that means Punk and McIntyre are both on Raw. Just wanted to throw that
Makes
out
sense because that's going to be the feud when Drew comes back.
there. Mm-hmm.
Originally it was going to be Seth, and then they opened the door to this, and you can still do Seth. You can still do Seth down the line. That's always there because I think Seth stayed on Raw, if I'm not mistaken. I believe
Yeah.
Seth stayed on
Yep.
Raw.
Yep.
Yep. So you can get that. But what struck me overall about this draft is, we complain after a lot of drafts that it tends to favor Raw because Raw has the 3 hours, and Raw was always Vince's baby and was seen as the flagship. And I wouldn't have blamed them for making Raw again top heavy because the Netflix deal. You got $5 billion from Netflix. I kind of expected most of your big headline talent to go to Raw. And I was really struck and pleasantly surprised to see, no, I feel like they really split the rosters in a very even way. Both shows have, some really good top talent. You put CM Punk and Cody Rhodes, who are the top baby faces in WWE. They're on opposite shows, so they're going to be anchors for their particular brand. You've got a lot of guys that will complement them that they can work with underneath. You've got some mid-card talents that really needed to be moved and needed to go somewhere to be freshened up and have that opportunity now. Like, it felt like for once we're maybe doing the brand split. I can't talk. The brand split correctly, and we're actually going to maybe see, what was talked about of like, we want to shake things up every so often, and we want to create opportunities and give people that ability to have television time to get over and do something. So, I mean, I thought it was, as an exercise in just where it sits now, not knowing obviously what we're going to be doing now that the draft is completed. I thought it was a good exercise in really making two very even shows and two very watchable shows that are going to have, some great talents, and hopefully, because I always say this too, hopefully have a different flavor between them, because I think, WWE has the ability to compete with itself as a way to sort of not necessarily keep other people out of the market, but keep them from really challenging them within the market, because they have all these diverse talents. They have so much television, they have so many shows, and they've created a structure where they can almost create their own internal alternative.
Yeah.
And I hope that's what we're going to be seeing. I think that's what we're going to be seeing, because I think that's something Triple H believes in.
Yeah, and so the next WWE pay-per-view is Backlash in France. And that's the first, to my knowledge, that's the first WWE pay-per-view ever in France.
I do believe it is, yeah, and I know that is going to be the strategy going forward, is that all of the all the TV shows are going to be
international. France. So that's Saturday, May 4th. That's literally this Saturday.
Yeah. Not even a week away. Yeah, this Saturday.
Yeah, it's literally this Saturday. And, for those who not sure because of the time difference, it's going to begin at 12:30 p.m. on Saturday. Okay. So 12:30 p.m. Eastern time if you're watching this. Keith and I are on the East Coast. 12:30 p.m. live on Peacock is Backlash. And of course, Cody was on Raw. He went to SmackDown. That was a big deal. But I mean, obviously, with that championship, that is kind of the SmackDown. That title.
Yeah, that surprised me a little bit too, because I thought they would have wanted to flip the titles. So
okay.
that made
the Judgment Day went to Raw, so Damian is on Raw.
Right. And so that, because they did say that if you're a champion, you can't be drafted, you can't be moved.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting, and I guess that would mean then that the Netflix deal is maybe different, because I know USA and I know Fox would get involved with the drafts and had some specific things that they wanted. And it seems like if you're not flipping the belts and stuff around, that maybe Netflix is a little more benign about it. And Netflix is maybe a little more like, no, we just want the content. So just do what you do. We don't care. We don't have notes. We don't have specific things that we want done.
Right. And if anybody's watching this live, there are a few of you. If there's something that you would like to talk about, like shoot us a comment right now.
Oh, yeah, please.
Because we're only going to be on here for another few minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. But I mean, if you guys want to steer the conversation somewhere, a lot going on. But again, like just to go back to Tony Khan for just a second, and it is moving forward. Very simply, we wanted from day one. In these past 5 years, we wanted AEW to succeed. You and I have both felt this way. Like, we wanted AEW. And in the beginning, we were kind of excited when it had Cody and, and everybody involved. And so you thought...
Good television at first.
They were doing some really good stuff. And it wasn't just the anti-WWE, the way it is now, where they constantly mention Punk, or they constantly mention other WWE. Will Ospreay made his, comment about Triple H, whatever. Like, the thing of the matter is this, is that we wanted it to succeed, and it is frustrating and upsetting. And even though my son and any other big time. Like, I have a neighbor down the street that loves AEW. He don't believe that I give a flying F about AEW because I don't watch it. I don't watch it because I don't want to waste my damn time watching this nonsense.
And like I said, God bless you if you love AEW and you love that style and you love all that stuff. God bless you. Wrestling is subjective. You know, there are people out there that would probably think that, you know, there are people out there that think that WWE is the only form of wrestling and all other forms of wrestling go to hell. And I don't like that. I don't agree with that. You know, I have my criticisms of AEW because I worry about AEW as a going concern.
Where is it going?
AEW can do what they want to do. I'm not imploring AEW to become, you know, what I would want to watch, and that's the only way to be successful. I want them to be successful. I want them to be safe.
No matter what that means.
Yeah. I want them to be able to be here long term.
Right.
Because I have seen companies fail and I have seen companies go away. And my concern right now is I see AEW doing a lot of things that made ECW go away, that made ECW go away, that almost made TNA go away.
One last thing I want to ask you. If the end game of AEW, if it falls 5 years from now, I'm just making this up, will the fatal blow of AEW be the firing of CM Punk and the whole and everything that went around that, or will it be this Tony Khan fiasco that's happening right now?
At the end of the day, it'll be Tony Khan's fault because everything that AEW does, whether it's successful, whether it's not successful, Tony Khan has made it very clear that he is the last word on everything in AEW. He is the booker, he is the boss, he is the owner, he is the executive producer, he is the showrunner.
He needs to hire people for all those positions and get the hell out.
It is on Tony Khan. So if AEW goes, unless something changes and Tony changes, you know, the way he's doing things, Tony Khan is going to be why AEW succeeds or fails. It's going to be the decisions that Tony Khan does or does not make is going to be the determining factor in the success or failure of AEW. Yep. Just like that, it was that way for WWE when Vince McMahon was in control and was at the height of his power. You know, the success.
I gotta say though, I'm really liking a Triple H run WWE. I am.
I am too. You know, it's a different feel. It's not perfect. There are still things that I think you can
right. There's little things,
but I think overall, I feel like there's a good direction. I feel like you can watch the shows without feeling embarrassed or there's not a cloud over them because, you know, there's, you know, other scummy things going on that have nothing to do with the show and everything to do with the people in charge of the show. So I think they're in a good position right now. I mean, they keep trumpeting that, you know, they're making more money than they ever have. I always say with that, when a business says that, though, like, okay, can you give me the numbers adjusted for inflation, though? I'll bet you're not going to. I bet you're not going to do it because I'll give you a hint. I'll give you a perfect example of this. What's the highest grossing movie of all time?
Avatar? Or one of them.
Endgame.
Avengers Endgame.
Avengers Endgame crossed Avatar. What's the highest grossing movie when you adjust for inflation, though?
I have no idea.
Gone with the Wind. It's still Gone with the Wind.
How about that?
And that's always my point when a company is saying, we're having our best time ever, we've done the most ever. Okay, but adjust for inflation, that's how good you're truly doing.
That's right. All right, guys. You know, we didn't have too many people watching live, but if you watch this on replay, we will be live here every Tuesday at 7. We really want this one to be more interactive with you, where you steer the conversation. We're going to have a topic or two to talk about, but, and Keith and I could talk wrestling all day long, but we would love to talk about what you want to talk about, and that's what this show is going to be about. Every Tuesday at 7, but we're still going to have on the bottom of your screen, you see there, this Sunday on Around the Turnbuckle, 6 p.m. As usual, we're going to have our old friend JT Cage talk about the history of wrestling music. JT Cage, full disclosure, it loves music in general, not just wrestling music. He is a music enthusiast. He was actually in a band. And he also just, he has a deep appreciation for the history of WWE themes. I mean, wrestling themes in general. Back in the day, there used to be a bell ringer, and somebody would come down to the ring, and the ring announcer would announce them, and there was no music. Yeah. There really wasn't any music until, I believe, Gorgeous George was one of the first guys to use it back in the day. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Professor. Like, Gorgeous George used to use Pomp and Circumstance before the Macho Man did.
Yeah,
and then
used Pomp and Circumstance.
He did, and then
a few different places.
But then it really got going with Hulk Hogan's Real American. I think that he came down to Eye of the Tiger first,
right?
Which
and the Freebirds using Leonard Skinner was huge,
right? Because they would come down to Freebird.
They opened a lot of eyes with that, because there were a lot of those old line promoters that they really had to fight with them and be like, this will get over. And,
so we're going to talk a lot about the history of wrestling music in wrestling, and obviously we'll talk a lot about Johnston and different, and the Rock and Wrestling Connection, and we'll talk about all kinds of whatever Mr. Cage comes up with. He wants to challenge either me or the Professor or both of us in some kind of wrestling music trivia, which he claims to be the expert in. So, hey, tune in on Sunday and play along with us and see if you guys can beat the expert, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good time.
It'll be a great time. So this Sunday on our normal time slot around the turnbuckle. In the meantime, guys, we appreciate everybody that ever watches our show and ever chimes in with comments, and we appreciate all you. And we'll see you Sunday at 6. For the Professor, I'm Big Al. This was Around the Turnbuckle Wrestling Hot Topics. We'll see you next week.
You think you know me?
Oh, yeah. If you smile.